Excited today to be joined on the Flagship podcast interview by legendary and National High School Coach of the Year. What a way to end his coaching time at Austin Westlake High School on a 40-game winning streak, 3 straight state titles. The one and only Todd Dodge. Oh, and yes, he played quarterback at the University of Texas and is the pride of Port Arthur. TD, how you doing?
Chip, I'm doing great.
I
That
mean,
last thing you said there, the pride of Port Arthur. I don't know that, but that's maybe the thing I'm most proud of.
yeah, we can start there. We got so much to get into today, and I'm excited to talk about all of it. But so many, um, big time achievers have come from Port Arthur, from Janis Joplin to Jimmy Johnson. What is it about Port Arthur, TD, that kind of creates that hunger for success and ability to achieve?
Well, what it was for me is just a blue collar work ethic that is down there. I mean, when you grow up, you know, everybody pretty much is in the same boat. Your parents are work for the refineries, or a whole lot of them do. So there's down in Port Arthur, down in Southeast Texas, there's a tremendous love for the great game of high school football. Um, it is a tough, hard nosed area. You learn how to, if you're ever successful at anything, you learn how to not get full of yourself. And if you ever have adversity, you know how to pick yourself up. And so I think that's some of the things that in the time that I was growing up down there is that those are the things that I learned and took from there.
I know you mentioned your mom being 83 and
Mhm.
she still knows who you are, and that's part of the reason you wanted to stop coaching right now, to spend
Mhm.
time with her, to spend time with grandchildren. Tell us about your parents
Yep.
and how they shaped your work ethic and drive to succeed.
Well, for me, my father was a Methodist minister. Okay, and my mother was a school teacher. Okay, so if people who understand, the Methodist Church in the state of Texas, is the norm is for the preacher and his family to move about every 4 years. And so probably the best thing that my father's uh, profession did for me personally was move me about every 4 years of my life and make me have to start over and make me have to face adversity when it came to. I was never that kid who was being handed anything. I was always the new kid coming in. Um, my mother, um, my mother's father, my grandfather, he was the athlete. He's the one that he played quarterback and catcher on the from 1924 through 1926 at the University of Missouri. And he was when I was growing up, he was um, he was kind of my mentor in my family. My mother was my biggest fan. She was at everything. And but when we got to Port Arthur, we moved. My parents moved when I was a sophomore, and I stayed. And I had family. I had one of my teammates' parents took out guardianship on me, and I stayed in Port Arthur for my last 2 years. So I lived in Port Arthur for a total of 8 years, and that was by far uh, the longest place that I'd ever lived.
Was that a tough decision? Obviously, your parents move, and where did they go when you
They went to
stayed?
Longview. They went
Okay,
to
so they're
Longview.
they're up there in Longview.
Yep.
You're in Port Arthur. Was that a tough decision? And what was it? Obviously, you went on to set records. Passing the football at Port Arthur Jefferson. But tell us about that decision.
Well, it was a very tough decision, but it's one that had been talked about because we knew that that could happen. I had started for TJ, my high school team, as a sophomore, and so right after my sophomore year, my dad got transferred. Well, we talked about if that happens, we would kind of look into maybe somehow me staying, because in those days there was nothing called, there is a thing called previous athletic participation now. Any coach, administrator that's in the business knows the PAPF, well, in those days there wasn't one. If you left, if you moved in somewhere for whatever reason, you had to sit out an entire year of varsity eligibility in all sports. So that's basically what I was facing going in. So we had, I stayed in Port Arthur, and people ask me all the time, well, when did you decide you wanted to be a coach? I said, well, it was in that next 2 years, because my head football coach, Ronnie Thompson, was like a father to me, and my teammates like Richard Rice and Brent Duhon, and Clay Sutherland, and Steve Durso, and Mark Hanna, and oh gosh, Roman LeVage, Gary Jefferson, Robert Smothers. I could go on and on. And it didn't matter what the color of your skin was in our locker room. This was the late 70s. Our football team during that time kind of wakened up an old refinery town to let them know that high school football was back.
That's powerful. It's like remember the Titans
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And you became the first Texas high school player to throw for more than 3,000 yards in a season. How did that, tell us about how that team did, how those final 2 years went for you?
Well, Ronnie Thompson, still to this day, to me, is the greatest combination quarterback wide receiver coach that I've ever come across. He had and that was back in 1978, 79, 80. He had a way of coaching that unit to spend a whole lot of time together. And so we were the beneficiaries of a man who had a great vision and was way ahead of his time in throwing the football. I mean, we were throwing the football anywhere between 30 and 35 times a game when everybody else was running the wishbone and the split back veer. I personally, I always could throw the ball a little bit. He saw something in me. He molded into me to refine it within his offense. But man, we had some great players. Brent Duhon, who there's nobody in the state of Texas right now who deserves to go into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame more than Brent Duhon does, and I hope that will happen. And he was the original great wide receiver. I mean, he caught 93 balls, Chip, in 1980.
Wow.
That's a ton right now, but for back then, Robert Smothers. So we had some really good players, and it was getting ahead of myself a little bit. I was telling our team as we were in halftime, I was on a team that 41 years ago, that had we won the state championship, we may still be spoken of as one of the greatest high school football teams to ever play, because we were really, really talented and we were really productive until one half of football, and we got beat in the state championship. And that was one that so we're just remembered as another team that got beat in state championship, got upset. This year's team, faced that going into halftime. We could be remembered as a team that three-peat and all that. But I told them, I said, you got to understand how the football world is very fickle. They'll remember you as one of the greatest of all time, and if you have one bad half and you lose a ball game, you're just going to be remembered as a good team. So our kids answered the bell.
Yeah. The win over Denton Geyer, and we'll get into that. We'll get into the incredible 40-game winning streak at Westlake, but I want to stay, since we're kind of going chronological.
Mm-hmm.
You get recruited, and obviously you pick Texas.
Mm-hmm.
What was the recruiting process like for you as the first 3,000 plus yard passer in Texas high school history?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I tell Cade, I tell Sam through the years here how different recruiting is. Recruiting back in my day, and I was, what they would call a 4 or 5 star guy nowadays. I was one of the 25 or 30 blue chip players in the state of Texas. That was a big deal. If you were a blue chip, you were a big deal or whatever. And So my recruit, but I got the letters and all that kind of stuff, and I got phone calls, but there was no going to junior days. There was no going to a camp the summer before. There was no committing early. You know, we had 4 players off of my high school football team that signed with the University of Texas. Myself, Brent Duhon, Robert Smothers, and rest in peace, Don Holloway. And all 4 of us signed on signing day. Well, we all 4 went on the 5 recruiting visits that we were going to go on in the month of January and early February before signing day. We do it to nothing. We got letters. My visits were Ohio State, Florida State, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Texas. And when it came down to it, I was one of those kids in the state of Texas at the time. That if the University of Texas came calling, then that's where I was going. I mean, there was no doubt. I lived in the state of Texas. I hoped that I would live in the state of Texas my entire life. So the Longhorns where I was going, no matter who else recruited me.
Fred Akers is the coach, and you go 19-4 as a starter at Texas, but you were in quarterback battles,
Mhm.
kind of the whole time. I mean, Robert Brewer and Rick McIver and
Mhm.
um, Morshall and Brett Stafford. The quarterback job, you and I've talked about this over the years as Sam, came through, and now, this past year with Hudson Cardin, Casey Thompson. I mean, being the quarterback at Texas is way more than just being the quarterback at Texas. How did that whole time shape you?
There was that 5-year window at the University of Texas. There was nothing that I could have done in a classroom. There's nothing that I could have done with a degree in hand more than playing quarterback at the University of Texas for preparing me for the profession I've gone into for the last 36 years. Okay. So when you play quarterback at the University of Texas, um, whether you like it or not, most of the time you are going to be one of the most loved people in the city of Austin, or you're going to be I don't know, I say the word hate, one of the most disliked persons in the city of Austin because of the rabid fan base that we have here. You are going to be one that when you're successful, you can't hardly buy your own dinner, in town. And if your team loses, um, it's not very fun being out in the public. You can't hide from it. I don't care whether it's the mid '80s, early '80s, or if it's 2022. But I'll tell you this: um, all of the men that I know, all of the guys that I know that came through as a quarterback are great leaders. They were. But they became even better because of the experience that they had through being at the University of Texas and playing quarterback there. And you and I've talked about this, Chip, many times, and I tell our players, any quarterback that I've ever coached, if they're going through adversity, I tell them there's absolutely nothing that you're going to go through that I haven't. So I do understand what you're going through. I understand the successes that you're going to have, and I understand the failures. I said, but I really do know what it feels like to be booed by 80,000 people when you walk on the field to begin the season. This a first game of the season, and to be booed by 80,000 people the minute you step your foot when they go. And the starting quarterback for the Longhorns is Todd Dodge. Boo. So that you either better get thick skinned or you're probably just going to crumble. The flip side of that, also, in that early part of that season, I also set some records for our university, and I got a standing ovation by the same 80,000 that booed me at the beginning of the game. So I look at, and I'm saying all that not to complain about my past. Really, I'm thankful that it happened to me because it prepared me to be a coach.
Yeah, I mean, you clearly have an unbelievable offensive mind, but you have a toughness that is going to come through to your players about adversity and being able to handle that.
Mhm.
that, I don't know how. I kind of look at Casey Thompson, what he just went through. Garrett Gilbert at Texas. Garrett left, had success at SMU, went on to, an NFL career, but it's so it's so intense at Texas. And I grew up going to the University of Michigan games. My parents were season ticket holders. I watched Jim Harbaugh and Tom Brady
Mhm.
as players at Michigan. Brady went through a quarterback controversy with Drew Henson, almost left. There's nothing like the quarterback position, TD, and you've succeeded at that level. You've coached guys to great success at that level. What do you love about that quarterback position?
Well, it's just one that there you have a lot of responsibility, and I'm one of those people that kind of wants it on me. Um, the quarterback room, the is one that a lot of people that don't really know football would think, well, I bet that's a bunch of guys that are backbiting and and don't support each other and so forth so on. And it really is just the opposite. I think, as I found out as a player and as a coach, the quarterback room is usually one of the tightest ones, one of the most close knit guys that keep in touch through the years, more than anybody else. And I've found that to be true. And I think that my players that I've coached have found that to be true, because you are so unique in the way that people treat you. Um, you are you are the guy on the team, along with the head football coach, that gets way too much credit when your team wins. I mean, you really do. People that and they love football and everything, but they automatically, when your team wins, the quarterback is the darling of the of the day. Well, he may not have really played that well, but his team won. On the flip side of that, when the team loses, the head coach and the quarterback are probably going to get way more blame, and they may not have coached that bad or played that bad in the game, but they're going to get, and that's just the way it is. And so that group of men, quarterbacks, there's kind of an unwritten fraternity in our country, that you kind of speak a language that no one else understands. They really don't understand. They can't understand until you've been through that, and that's, to me, what makes it so special.
What I want you triggered something in my mind just a second ago. That state championship game that you played in high school.
Hmm.
Who did you play against?
Odessa Permian.
Odessa Permian. Mojo.
Yep.
What do you remember about that game?
I remember that it was the coldest game that I've ever played in. We were played at Texas State, so I remember that part of it. It was on December the 17th, 1980. It was probably about 15 degrees in Dallas. Of course, that the old Texas Stadium, had the hole in the roof, and it was really cold. So, and we were highly favored in the game against Permian, and we were having our way with them the first half. We were winning 19-6 at halftime, and then the old mojo got us the second half. They started coming back, and so forth and so on. And so, we got beat in the game, and as I mentioned earlier, that was one that, of all the games we won, is the one that you can't get out of your mind for many years. And for me personally, just, I mean, as a competitor, it took, you know, I was coaching South Lake Carroll in 2000 through 2006. In 2006, my last game there, we faced Odessa Permian in the third round of playoffs, and my son Riley was our quarterback, and we played them in another very cold game in Jones Stadium in Lubbock. And I mean, we beat them 49-7, and so it's kind of stupid, but it's kind of my personal way. Some 30 years later, that I was able to get some sort of revenge on the old mojo, but they really, when you think back about it, but I've got so much respect for that program and that tradition there. I guess I've been a fan of theirs silently through the years, because of who they are, what they've done, and the pride that they have. I mean, hell, I played against them, and they beat us at one of those state championships that they got hanging, and it was against my team, and that was way before they even thought about making a movie about them.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a quick break with Todd Dodge, the legend, as he steps away from Austin Westlake on a 40-game winning streak, 3 straight state titles. We'll get into it right here on the Flagship Podcast interview. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we'll roll on. And TD, you said you decided in high school you wanted to be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so you leave Texas with your 19-4 record as a starting quarterback, and you start off in your coaching career. And what did you know you wanted to be a part of your coaching identity?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had an opportunity to stay at Texas in GA, right after I got through. Coach Akers was leaving, and Coach McWilliams was coming back to the University of Texas, and I had an opportunity. However, I got married. Elizabeth and I got married, right after we got right before my career was over with, and so I was married, and so I needed to make a little bit more money than just being a GA at the time, and so I took a job as a quarterback coach at Rockwall High School up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we the very first year, Chip, that I coached, we went all the way to the state championship game, got beat in the finals, and I thought, man, this stuff's kind of easy. Golly, this is going to be easy. And then it was like 15 years later before I ever made it back to a state championship as a head coach, and so. But I worked there one year. I worked at probably as a young coach, the best thing that ever happened to me was to go coach for Ron Poe in McKinney, Texas. And they're important to a town when they've got a stadium named after them. There's a stadium called Ron Poe Stadium, and so I worked for him at McKinney High School when it was one high school, and that's the best thing that happened to me as a young coach. Then coached in college for 2 years at North Texas, quarterback coach, and then, then the head coaching stuff started. And I tell people all the time, I said, like with Riley right now, Riley he's been at South Lake Carroll for 4 years, and he is 54-5 after 4 years. I was about after 4 years, my first 2 head coaching jobs. Never made the playoffs. Was I may have won 12 games all together, 15 games all together. I mean, it was not. It was a tough go at the first part of it.
Well, your time at South Lake Carroll is legendary. What were you, 15, 59-1, 79-1?
Yeah,
79-1. With 4 state titles in a 5-season span, and your only loss was to Katy.
Yep.
In the state championship game, and it was like a 1-point game.
Yep.
In 2003.
Right.
I mean, that's an unbelievable time. And I bet you're going to tell me the only game you remember is the loss to Katy.
Well, no, it's not the only one, but it for a long time, if you're not careful as a coach, you got to protect yourself from yourself sometime, and the things that go through your mind, because for a long time that is the one that you think about. And but I will say this, that loss caused us to win a whole lot more games in the future because it made us better. We went on after that game, we went on another 48 game winning streak, so we ended our time with a three-peat there at South Lake Carroll on a 48 game winning streak, and that game really did we were pretty good at the time, and it made us even better.
I heard you say after the game, after you beat Denton Geyer to win the state championship, you thanked your punt return guy, your return specialist.
Yep.
And said, I've lost a state title game because we didn't, hang on to the punt returns. Were you referring to the Katy game?
No, I was referring to the state championship game my senior year in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, in my football life, I've got, you know, two rings that probably that stayed off of my hand and all the teammates is the Cotton Bowl 1984 when we got beat by Georgia, and it was a fumble punt that kind of led that, and not that it was the sole deal, I can promise you that. But and then when I was a high school senior, the state championship, that's the what ignited the team, the Odessa Permian, to beat us was a kind of a muff punt. And so I've always had a philosophy on punt returns, um, is just possess the football. When they punt it to us, let's catch it. Let's make great decisions. Now we've had some outstanding punt returners in our time, but I know this sounds crazy, but as a head football coach, I could care less if we ever have 1 yard of return. I want the ball possessed. I want when the ball bounces on the ground, I want us to make sure that we make good decisions on getting away from it. And so Hunter Luke is one for the football fans in Austin. Keep your ears and eyes open for. He will be a senior next year, slot receiver, but he's going to be fabulous as a receiver. But he is a really good kick returner and punt returner.
Well, you've had great quarterbacks, and you've helped them become great quarterbacks, including your son, Riley Dodge. So, what was that like coaching Riley
Mhm.
and winning at South Lake Carroll?
The absolute thrill of my career. Um, when Riley lived in field houses with me, was on the sideline with me all the way through. When he entered the ninth grade at South Lake Carroll, he became mine um, as far as a player. I was the quarterback coach, and he was a quarterback. So not only had I coached him in the front yard all those years before, but now he was in my room, and Riley was, in South Lake. We moved there when he was in fourth grade, and by the time he got to ninth grade, there was no doubt that he was the quarterback of that class. And so we didn't have to go through any of that, the jealousies of playing the coach's kid and all that. He was established, but we tried to speed up his learning curve. So we played him on the JV as a freshman. Him and Trey Newton both played up, and then they practiced with the varsity every day. Never played in a varsity game, but practiced with the varsity and got the ever living what beat out of them on the scout team. So the one thing about Riley, no one could ever say that he got preferential treatment at South Lake. He got hammered his whole freshman year in practice every day, and then as a sophomore, he played on our state championship team. He was a backup quarterback, and I wanted to get him some playing time as a sophomore because I knew he would be our guy his junior and senior year, kind of like what I did with Cade Klubnik. When Cade was sophomore, I played Riley though. Riley played a lot of wide receiver. He had probably 40 catches for about 600 yards, as a sophomore, and doing things. And I tell people all the time, Greg McElroy and Riley Dodge together in the 2005 season, when Greg was a senior and Riley was a sophomore, had all of those stats gone to one person, that still would be a state record for every quarterback in 6A football. I mean, they threw for almost 6,000 yards together. They threw for 72 touchdowns together. I mean, it was unbelievable, the production that came out that year. And then, of course, to win it his junior year, to win the state championship with my son, of all the state championships, all seven of them, that's the one that means the most to me because I was able to do it with my own son and my own family.
And now you mentioned it, Riley's 54-5 to
Isn't that
start
crazy?
his
Yeah.
time at South Lake Carroll as the head coach, and you played Riley for
Yeah.
the 2020 state championship. Quinn Ewers at quarterback for South Lake Carroll, Cade Klubnik quarterback at Westlake. There I am blowing up the quarterbacks when your defense was
Yeah.
completely off the charts under Coach Salazar, who you've helped make sure takes over the Westlake program. But what was that like facing Riley for a state championship?
To be honest with you, it was. I feel and I think that Riley feels like when we look at it 10 or 15 years from now, and it's still the first time that a father and son have ever met in a state championship game, it will. That's the thing it meant most to our family is that we were the first to get something done together. Um, you know, we were supposed to play them, in a kickoff classic kind of before the season.
Right.
So that was one that really Riley and I didn't really look forward to because we were going to have to change so much as far as our verbiage and signals and all that kind of stuff. Well, that didn't happen because of COVID, and then we just told each other, said, hey, if we end up playing this year, we both dang sure have earned it. And we never really thought that it would be happening because we always thought that my team would go Division II and his team would go Division I, and we didn't have. So we talked ball all year long. Chip, if you could be a fly on the wall and listen to the conversations that we had about how he's attacking this coverage and how I'm attacking this coverage, what kind of formations do you like against this? What do you like? We pour it out to each other we bounce ideas. We bitch and moan about our personnel sometimes, man, we're not, this guy's this guy's that, whatever, so, and then all of a sudden we look up and we're playing all the way to, and we get, gosh dang, we're one game away, and then we go, these kind of can't, we're not both going to beat North Shore and Duncanville on the same day. And sure enough, they were ranked number 2 and number 3 in the nation, and on the day that Westlake beat North Shore and South Lake Carroll beat Duncanville. And so now, lo and behold, we're playing each other. And to be honest, that whole deal, the lead up to it was all fun. I didn't get a whole lot of gratitude out of beating my son's team. I can promise you that. And I was glad when it was over with. I was so proud of my team. And it didn't take away the joy that I had for the Westlake Chaparrals, but it really wasn't that much fun, celebrating against your own son's team.
Well, and that turned out to be Quinn Ewer's last game.
Yep.
He ends up graduating early, going to Ohio State, and now, of course, he's transferred to Texas. We haven't seen him play football
Right.
since that state championship game in 2020. But you obviously, have followed his career and saw him up close. You had the game plan for him. What stands out to you about Quinn Ewers?
Extremely special arm talent. I mean, if you ever, when you're dealing with quarterbacks and you're standing close to them as they throw just routes versus air or 1-on-1 or 7-on-7, if you've been around it long enough, it doesn't take you long to figure out that's special when it comes out of their hand. He has a very, very strong arm, but one of the things that people don't realize in throwing a football, it's not always just how strong your arm is. It's a lot of times he has great hand talent too. What I mean by that, that ball spins out of his hand because he can really flick that thing off of his index finger. He can throw the ball at different arm angles. But anticipation, probably the guy that I would, the times that I've been around Quinn, again, Riley coached him. I've only been around him in camp settings and stuff like that, obviously, and got prepared to play against him. But his arm and his throwing motion and his ability probably reminds me most of Rogers, there for Green Bay than anybody else.
Yeah, that's tall cotton. You, having played quarterback at Texas, I think this is important for you to say. People hear Quinn Ewers, highest rated quarterback recruit since Vince Young, and think, oh, wow, he's going to come in and lead Texas immediately.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Vince Young redshirted. Vince Young also had some struggles in 2003 before he lit the world on fire in 04 and 05. It takes time. I mean, there's Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams, but you tell us what fans need to be because Hudson Card is talented too. He's there. What these quarterbacks are going to be going through in spring football and going into fall camp.
Well, I mean, if a true freshman, and that's really what Quinn is. I mean, Quinn didn't play his senior year in high school. He really hasn't played any football since that state championship game and about a year ago, about right now. I believe that universities all across America they get real fired up about incoming freshmen. They ought to cool down a little bit. It is not in the best interest of your football team if you're starting a true freshman. I can promise you that. I don't care how good he is. Yeah, and you've got the Trevor Lawrences of the world. You got the Tuas of the world. Caleb Williams came on, and if anybody really followed, Oklahoma after the Texas game this year, Caleb Williams had his freshman moments too. I think I visited with you about this before, Chip, and I did some unexact research, but it's pretty close. From the time that Colt McCoy got hurt against Alabama in 2009 until Sam, of course, Sam started, I think, 8-9 games as a true freshman because of injury. There was something like I'll be close. There's like 47 or 48 starts by true freshmen, not redshirt freshmen. I'm talking about guys that just got on campus. And, people always talking about what happened to the University of Texas between 2009, all that. It was so much inconsistency during that time. I said, well, look back. It's not in your best interest to start a true freshman at quarterback. That position, the speed of the game, when you go from freshman football to JV football and JV football to varsity football, the speed of the game is unbelievable. Like what I do with our quarterback, what I did with Cade Klubnik when he was a freshman, I put him into what I call the blender for an entire spring. I made him get just the same thing I did with Riley when Riley was a freshman, to get them ready, because you have to put them in that. I don't think that at the college level, if a freshman is going to end up starting, the coaches can't afford to put them under the kind of blender that they need to be under to get caught up to the speed of the game. It's just, it'll happen every once in a while. And these guys, believe me, they're so much more prepared as they come in than they were 20 years ago. But they have to. The thing about it is, unfortunately for the University of Texas and unfortunately for other colleges across the nation, they have to, because people are transferring. They're not waiting to start as a sophomore or start as a junior. I look back on my career, I redshirted, I backed up, and then I started my third year here. I was a redshirt sophomore, and I was start quarterback, and then blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I didn't play a whole lot of football here until the third year I was here. And so that's just my take on it, is people should not, as Coach Sarkisian, what a fabulous quarterback guy he is. He'll figure it all out. But I guarantee he probably wish he had somebody a little bit more experienced, I mean, the thing about Texas fans right now, they may not be that fired up about Hudson Card, or they might not have been that fired up about Casey. And I personally think they did fine. They just, it is what it is. But Hudson Card is a very experienced quarterback right now.
Yeah. He's got starts. He's got starts under his belt. He's got game time under his belt. Well, and Coach Sam Ehlinger, obviously a special talent, and so excited for him to have this opportunity with the Colts. What, when I say the name Sam Ehlinger, what comes to mind?
That's love. I mean, I love him like he's one of my own. I have a very special relationship with Sam. Pride. I mean, I'll never feel the same way I do about my own son. But I have some players that I've coached in my past that they feel like you get that same feeling, that they're sons to you first. His toughness. I mean, I never will have to here in Austin, Texas, convince anybody of Sam Elliger's toughness, his physical and his mental toughness. But um, if there's ever anybody that can start as a freshman at the University of Texas or anywhere, it takes that kind of physical toughness, that kind of mental toughness. Um, you know, Sam and I have talked about this before about the tragedy of losing his father when he was in 8th grade. But in everything you do in life, you try to make tragedies and huge adversity into something that's going to make you stronger and better. And Sam definitely did that because um, he. I always told him, I said, there's nothing more tragic that's going to already happen in your life. You're 23 years old right now. That's already happened. So it's kind of like Sam went through his time here. It's like, when the bad times came, you can't put nothing on me that I hadn't already been through. And so he didn't. He was not one of those people who was going to shrivel up. He was going to stand up for his team, and I'm so proud for him now. He loves the Colts. He absolutely loves everything about that organization, and he talks so highly of Coach Wright and the all of the GMs and the owners, and so I'm really happy for him.
Well, I got to ask you too about Connor Robertson, who is headed to Texas on the offensive line from Westlake. What tell us about Connor Robertson?
It's funny you ask about Connor. He is. I've got a lot. Just 36 years of it, but ones that there's a tremendous amount of respect that I have for him. But I'm in a little bit of a texting thread with some of my old players, old teammates, and most of them are offensive and defensive linemen. And they were asking me last night about Connor. What was he like? They liked him as a player. What was he like as a kid? So first of all, he's a great kid. He understands what we in Westlake we call the schizophrenic nature of football. We would like you to have a split personality. We'd like for you to be a perfect gentleman off the field and take care of other people, and then on the field you got a nasty streak about you. And Connor Robertson is the poster child for that. He's 6'3". He weighs 300 pounds. He is a really, really good athlete. This is, I have fun with my offensive lineman. So before the game plays, we do a little pat and go where the offensive lineman and me get down on one end of the field and I throw passes to them, and they love it. It's probably the funnest thing that they have all week long, and they run fly routes and they run post routes and post corners, and that dang Connor Robertson at 300 pounds, he runs down there and sticks his foot in the ground, catches the ball over his shoulder like he's a dang skilled athlete. So I'll leave that. He won't be catching any pass at Texas. But the thing that I like about him is he truly understands the difference between pain and injury. He is a guy that will play uncomfortable. He has had he has had some very uncomfortable games that he's played because of pain, and he's played fabulous with pain. So he's a tough kid, a really tough kid. As you can probably tell right now, I'm pretty high on him. I'm as a Longhorn fan, as a former player for the Horns. I am really, really fired up about him. He's the kind of guy that Texas needs to bring him back.
That's high praise coming from Todd Dodge. I'll tell you that. And TD, what about, is this it? Are you going to get back in the game at some point? You're a young guy. What?
Well, I appreciate that. I want to take a year off. I've got my quarterback, receiver camps I've been doing. That'll kind of scratch the itch. I want to spend some time, more time around my mother, my grandkids. I guess the only thing, after a year goes by, probably if I ever got back into coaching, I really don't care to be a head coach again. I really don't care to be an offensive coordinator again. I want to go coach somebody's quarterbacks, whether that be at the college level or the high school level. And, that's really, and so if anybody was ever in need of that then maybe we would do that. But other than that, we're going to spend time with family, and Elizabeth and I'll go do some stuff that we've never been able to do. And I'm going to go to Clemson this spring, go watch Cade in the spring game. While I'm there, and we'll see Larry Applewhite and Sandra. We'll play a little golf up in North Georgia, and so that'll be fun times.
That's awesome. Well, what you've done is truly amazing and worthy of being named the National High School Coach of the Year. Congratulations on that. I know you had
Thank
your
you.
retirement banquet the other night, and it's been an amazing journey and so much fun to watch, and so many kids you've touched and helped provide them memories that they'll carry forward and talk about for the rest of their lives. And I always love talking ball with you and just getting your perspective on things, because I just think it's such a great perspective, and we really appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Chip. I appreciate y'all having me on.
Hey, Todd Dodge, ladies
Welcome.
and gentlemen. For Todd Dodge, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, here on the Flagship Podcast, stay safe and keep the faith.